you this morning. I love when Larry was talking yesterday about this being the 20th year. I don't know how many of the 20 I've been to, but almost all of them. But I have a big change this year. You see, I am now Professor Emeritus. I beat Steve to the retirement line, so I'm enjoying that. And I was asked actually before this, what does it mean to be emeritus? And it means the university can claim you and they don't have to pay you anymore. So it's a very, very practical thing. But it means I can still root for the team. I can still get the same tickets I've always had to the football games. Just have to pay the consumer price, not the faculty price. So what we're going to do in the next hour or so is talk about the latest updates in all kinds of communication technologies. This is based on a project I've been doing with Technology Futures for more than 30 years. Back in 1992, we did the first edition of the Communication Technology Update. Back then, it was just called Update. We later added the fundamentals because people wanted to know history and structure and theories and things like that. So this is a thing that Helen, Mary, and I did 18 editions of the book. We actually have one of the authors in the room. You talk about people doing something and going on to big things. Ray Segern, who is with the brand guys here in Austin, when he was an undergraduate at the University of Texas, actually wrote a chapter. So we can tell some great stories about that, but yes, yeah, yes. But it was ironic because the big publisher said, well, you can't have students writing chapters, you know, they all have to be written by experts. And I said, look, here are all the chapters. You tell me which ones were students and which ones were faculty, if you can differentiate. And it ended up the students were the best ones. So I love working with students. I love working with motivated people. So anyway, but I love even more being able to talk about, let's see, big thing. You've already seen it. 2025 is the most uncertain year I have ever seen in my lifetime in terms of technology. We're used to changes in technology. One of the things we talk about in the book is how the technology itself doesn't change, but the organizations change, the competition and the regulations change a lot. And we have some evolution in technology, but more than anything else, we have uncertainty coming in. AI is the biggest thing. Everybody's talking about AI, and I wanted to show the utility of AI. So I went to one of the image generation services and said, please generate an image of Augie Grant talking about AI. So you can see how on target AI is this year. But that's okay. That's okay. AI is still a toddler technology. That means it's going to do things that are unexpected, it's going to break things, and it's going to give us lots of incredible frustrations. And then pretty soon it will be a child technology, and we'll have to teach it things, and then it'll be a teenager, and it'll rebel against us. So about the time all of you have reached emeritus status, it will be a mature technology. That will be interesting to see. Quantum computing has not been mentioned here. This is the technology I want you to have way in the back of your minds. This is going to have a bigger impact than AI, in my opinion, because it changes the power of computing. It changes how computers will work. It will work hand in hand with AI and will provide another set of revolutions. We'll talk more about that in a second. The big thing is organizational changes. These are the things that can happen day to day, week to week. You know, I looked at some of the discussions of different companies, had a great discussion last night of the history of AT&T, how what we know as AT&T today started out as Southwestern Bell and then SBC, which was a spin-off of AT&T that ultimately became big and powerful enough that it could buy the parent company and then change the name because the branding was so powerful. So we got a lot of mergers that are going to happen. We have divestitures, and of course there's going to be some regulatory change. I like to think of these as the Trump tremors. They are shaking the industry. Some people love where things are happening, some people hate it, but for almost everyone there's uncertainty. You don't have to look any further than what's going on with TikTok I'd like going with alliteration, so I said TikTok tsunami of news. We don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. We know what the law says. We know what the executive order says. We know what the company says. We know what all the prospective buyers say, and none of those match up. So I might give you a prediction at the end if you want it. We have a new Federal Communication Commission. Not only has the chair been appointed, but one of the Republican seats has been filled. Remember, the FCC, always 3-2, 3 from the party in power, 2 from the other party. And so there is a majority of conservatives. We see that net neutrality is probably going to go away completely. We see that the complaints that were filed, or 4 complaints filed against broadcast networks that were dismissed by the old FCC a couple of weeks ago, 3 of which have been reinstated by the new FCC already, 3 against ABC, NBC, and CBS. The one against Fox was not reinstated. We can talk a lot about that if you want. And finally, we have to worry about the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice. They have antitrust actions in progress. I really want to know what's going to happen with Google. Is Google going to be asked to divest? Will Google voluntarily divest as AT&T did back in 1982? Or will Google become a favored company and be allowed to stay as it is? We don't know. So it's going to be a fascinating couple of months. So let's jump into what's going on with specific technologies. The most pervasive technology is television. 98-99% penetration, and television has been constantly evolving. We just came off the 2025 Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and I'm so eager to show you. This is the big news about television at the 2025 Consumer Electronics Show. Yeah, let's see. No 3D TV, oh, that failed. No curved TV, we had that. Larry talked about 8K TVs. Yeah, they're out there, and we'll talk about 8K in a second. But the biggest thing is the most pervasive technology has almost nothing going on right now. Well, almost nothing. They had rollable TV. Yes, this screen rolls into that box. And then if you push a button, the screen comes out of the box. I looked at this, and I flashed back a few years ago. I was president of the Broadcast Education Association that was meeting at the old Las Vegas Hilton. And for some reason, they thought I was important and put me in one of the presidential suites up on the top floor. And at the foot of the bed, there was a button, and a TV came out of a console so you could watch TV in bed. I looked at this and said, huh, so they're reinventing the Las Vegas Hilton. So, okay, that's not a lot of change, but here's what is changing: streaming. And the biggest thing that's going on right now is the movement of sports content from linear TV to streaming TV. From the traditional broadcast. Larry talked yesterday about how we reached this crossover point and how the crossover kind of slowed down. And the theory I'm going to offer you, Larry, is one of the reasons that slowed down was the content that people most wanted was not available on streaming that year. It was not just the strike, but in looking at all of the habits of people want live sports, people want news, people want Judge Judy. Oh, guess what? They put Judge Judy on streaming and people didn't watch. People wanted to keep watching that on traditional TV. They put dramas. We got Ozark. We got all of the other Netflix series. What was the Jackal on Peacock? you know, so we have content pushing us over there. But the fact that we didn't have the live streaming made a difference. Well, now we have it. They started doing experiments a year ago. Some of you may remember the Miami Dolphins versus Kansas City Chiefs game that NBC streamed on Peacock. The big one this year was Netflix having 2 games on Christmas Day. That's a game changer. The Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight last summer, that was a game changer. More than anything, because it tested the limits of what the technology could do. And the interesting thing is, in the 5 months between these 2 broadcasts, the technology developed significantly. Lots of technical problems with the Tyson-Paul fight, almost none. So Netflix is going to be stepping up to the plate and bidding when you're looking at March Madness, when you're looking at the NFL. The big one that's unknown is WNBA. That's the fastest growing sport of interest. Keep in mind, this past year, NBA ratings are down 40%. WNBA ratings are up by almost 80%. So the question is, what content is going to go to streaming and why? And again, that will move us down. So Larry, I think when we come back next year, we'll have more of these boxes, but the crossover has occurred. For the average person, it doesn't make a difference. They want to see their program when they want to see it, and they'll find it. But it does have an impact, because right now the consumer is facing this cacophony of branding. Which do I want? I wanted to watch, I did mention The Jackal was on Peacock. How many of you seen The Jackal? There we go, 3 of us. Great series, wonderful acting, and almost nobody saw it because it was on Peacock. But as we look over here, Warner Brothers Discovery taking HBO and making it a subset of Max. I don't know about that. We all know how powerful Netflix is. Disney, that's not just Disney, that's Disney Plus. That's National Geographic. Oh, and they own ESPN. What we're going to see is some consolidation. For the consumers, this is too complicated. Comcast is already starting to break up its assets to facilitate a merger. Same thing with Warner Brothers Discovery. They're reorganizing so they can facilitate either a divestiture or a merger. So this is the last time you will see all of these separate companies. Next year, they will be different. You'll still have the same programs. You'll still be able to find Judge Judy somewhere. You'll still be able to watch the news somewhere. So what happens to these? These are the broadcast networks. These are the networks that we relied on. The days of Walter Cronkite and Huntley and Brinkley, they would give us news. They would give us entertainment. They had a combined audience share of 90%. That means any evening, of all the people watching TV, 90% were watching one of these 4 outlets. So that's the consumer side. But let's look at the business side. When we look at where these companies make their money, the network actually makes only a fraction of the profit. Most of the profit for these companies is in their local TV stations that they own and operate. For CBS, it's WCBS in New York and a dozen other stations nationwide. Same thing for NBC. They have WNBC and KNBC in New York and Los Angeles, respectively. The profits of the operations at the local station level approach $1 billion. The profits at the network level are, when they make profits, are in the hundreds of millions. The network subsidizes this. So they are trying to stream. You can get all of the CBS content on Paramount Plus. You can get the NBC content on Peacock. ABC still has its own. Haven't quite figured out how to watch Fox yet, but it's too complicated for me. But I know from a financial perspective, they still rely on the local TV stations to generate the revenue. So how does this impact local TV? Again, local TV used to be the most consumed medium. We know that the broadcast TV is not going to have as much, but they're going to have more local news and local sports. count on seeing a lot more high school football games, high school basketball games on your local TV. Right now, broadcast stations get something called retransmission revenues from your cable companies, your satellite providers. That's now up to 20% of the revenue. As people cut the cord, that's going away. The big thing I like to point to is the impact on local advertising. Keep in mind, the primary economic function of local television is to provide local advertisers a way to reach consumers. It's a very efficient tool when you're starting a business to attract people to your business. So it's going to impact local advertisers. The networks are going to try to deliver directly. They're going to have increasing dependence on live sports. And again, we won't have this monopsony of 4 networks controlling everything as Netflix gets Amazon Prime and the others get more into the game. Technologically, we are in the midst of a revolution in broadcast television called Next Gen TV, known technically as ATSC 3.0. It is being adopted nationwide. I check the statistics every couple of months, and there are another dozen stations, another 5 or 6 markets that are adopting it, and nobody sees it. Gives you all kinds of things to improve broadcast television. And people don't care if it's 120 frames a second or if it has enhanced audio. They want to watch the game. So it's a great innovation. It's great for broadcasting. And do any of you have a next-gen TV? So I'm seeing no. You actually, and how many of you have bought a new TV set in the last 2 years? Raise your hand. Okay. At least half of you have a next-gen TV and don't know it. That's how visible this technology is. So again, lots of uncertainty. Oh, high-res TV. This is Larry and I have this discussion every year. You know, we go from the amount of content you had in a traditional old analog TV would be a little square. Your HD TV currently, the standard is this much, 4K, this much, and for 8K, this is how much content you have to transmit. So when he shows you the graph of this is how much bandwidth it takes up, he's absolutely right. If you're transmitting in 8K, you need that much bandwidth. There are a lot of other things that go with it. The issue is nobody can see it. You can't see the difference between a 4K and an 8K TV unless you get within 2 feet of the TV set. Nobody watches television from 2 feet away. You may watch a laptop that closely, but you're typically, the type of shared experience you have on TV, you're watching from anywhere from 6 to 12 feet away. Despite that fact, it goes back to the Consumer Electronics Show. Why are 8K TVs selling? Because they are available to be sold. Because Vizio needs something new to sell. Samsung wants to have a new product. LG wants to have the latest. So if you go into Best Buy tomorrow, you will have a choice of getting a regular HD TV or a 4K or an 8K. Most of them are 4K now. And you will be told, yes, you need the 8K. Can't see the difference. But that doesn't mean you're not getting the newest and best, you know? Kind of like, we know how our speedometers on our cars all go up to 120 or 140, you know? I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, but I would guess that very few people, except those in the second row, have ever driven past 100 miles an hour this year. I won't say ever, because some of us did stupid things in our youth. Anyway, so here's the graph, the forecast, and again, Larry's updated the graph. He showed the update yesterday. I didn't get a chance to grab it and put it in. But we know that we're moving down the adoption curve of 4K. The 8K is just starting. It's not just the characteristics of the technology. If the consumer perceives a difference, whether or not there really is a difference, the consumer will adopt it. And if it's the only thing that's available, the cost of production of the advanced technology has gone down significantly. So it costs the same amount today to make an 8K screen as it costs to make an HD screen 20 years ago. So, and that also means the cost of the HD screens have gone down. So, lots going on in TV, even though there's nothing going on in TV. What about cinema? We had one of the industries, communication industries, that was most impacted by the pandemic was cinema, because literally nobody wanted to go into a crowded room, sit with a bunch of strangers and breathe the same air they were, when that could make you sick or kill you. And the cinema industry literally shut down the second half of 2020 and didn't start to come back until late 2021, 2022. Well, guess what? The rebound has been very effective. I picked just 3 movies here. We see Wicked, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Inside Out 2. Each of these had box office revenues of more than $500 million. By any measure, that's a lot of money. And the overall box office is up for the year. We're looking at here's the movie box office. It's right around $10–12 billion for the year. But I put this up to keep it in perspective. We always talk about the box office and the importance of cinema. And you see, well, that's a fraction of the video games, less than 1/10 of what video games are. Oh, but the whole advertising industry, we're looking at about $800 billion, which pales when we're looking at all telecom. You know, if you want to put your money somewhere where you know it's generating a lot of money, AT&T is a much better place than Paramount right now, just by comparison. But you're going to hear a lot more about this little slice. Anybody see Timothée Chalamet in A Complete Unknown? If you love music, oh my God, what a fantastic music. And he is the host and musical guest on Saturday Night Live tomorrow night. Yeah, he's in the news. What did they do at AT&T this past week? I got to tell you, as a person who watches the tech, I can talk a lot more about Timothée Chalamet than I can talk about what's going on in AT&T. Much bigger impact up here, but that's the fun thing about the entertainment industries, is we are entertained by them. All right, so that moves us to video games. Let's spend a minute on video games. This is important. I just told you that the total revenues of the cinema industry were about 10 to 12 billion in the US. Globally, they actually were about 40 billion last year. Video game revenue, 188 billion, 5 times as big as the cinema industry. And this is a combination of sales of the consoles, sales of the software, sales within the apps as people are playing Fortnite and other games and want to add on. This is a big industry, and it's growing at a nice rate this past year. 2% is not bad for anything in entertainment. Not massive, but something to keep in mind. We're still waiting on this convergence of video games and VR. The expectation was, and we'll talk about this in a second, that when the Vision Pro came out, we'd have this whole new era of video games, and that hasn't materialized. Talk about why that is in a second. Oh, let's talk about it right now. Last year, look, here's the Apple Vision Pro. It's going to revolutionize things. Today, they've shut down the manufacturing short term, if I believe the reports I've read, and they're still selling some, but not a lot. Again, I love to do it. You're a very tech-savvy group. I'm going to guess that at most 1 or 2 hands are going to go up. How many of you own an Apple Vision Pro? None. How many of you own any of the Meta Quest? Wow, okay. See, wonder why we haven't converged all these technologies. There are barriers. We'll get to that in a second, but let's focus a second on the Apple Vision Pro and what happened with that. First thing was the cost point. To buy just the unit was $3,900. Then if you wanted to get a carrying case and all the accessories that came with it, you're looking at up to $6,000. There was very limited availability of apps. The people who tried it loved it. It could do wonderful things as long as you're keeping the headset on. You could see through the headset. It's translucent, but it still has huge applications. I think the big applications are going to be in industry, in military, in training. Typical VR application, for example, I have a brother who's in the HVAC business. Well, he's retired now, but he was in the HVAC business, training people on how to fix things. Imagine somebody comes to your house, you have a broken air conditioner, they put this on, and it walks them through. Okay, here are the screws to pull off. Here are the things to look for. And it literally diagnoses what's wrong and helps the repair person fix it. That's the next gen of repair technology. That's a practical application of VR. That's worth paying $4,000 for the right headset and the software. But playing games or sorting your personal files may not be the, what we're looking for. What's going on? Meta continues to dominate. Remember, Meta bought Oculus, and they have this series of headsets called the Quest. They started out being tethered, so you had to walk around with some wires, and they were heavy. The wires are gone. The headsets are lighter. It's affordable. I think their latest is $399. There's still physical limitations. If you have any kind of vision impairment, they haven't developed the software to facilitate your needs. There's still, most people say, a 15-minute limit. If you have the HMD on, the head-mounted device on for more than 15 minutes, it's going to cause some disorientation, and you may end up like literally falling and hurting yourself. So the recommendation is you have experiences that are less than 15 minutes. And in order to do it right, you have to have a dedicated space. You can't just set it up and use it. You have to, in order to use it correctly, minimum 6 by 6 foot. They recommend 12 by 12 feet. That's a lot of space, especially in a home, to be dedicated. So there's a niche market for VR. Not a huge market. It's something to watch. Certainly not a huge bandwidth consumer right now. That brings us to the metaverse. One of the reasons that Facebook changed the corporate name to Meta was because Zuckerberg envisioned a world like the internet, only a virtual world where all of the virtual worlds could be connected. Well, they're not. If we get to that point, remember that was the big innovation in the internet. The internet was created in the 1970s with lots of individual applications, but it wasn't until the World Wide Web connected people together, and we had email systems where you could email from one system to another. You know, any of you old enough to have Prodigy as your service provider? Your Prodigy mail could not reach someone who was on AOL, who could not reach someone who was on the Bell South net. Ultimately, when everything was connected together, so it didn't matter what system you were on, we had much greater ability to reach a critical mass. We're not there. If the virtual worlds get as connected as the internet became in the 1990s, we have potential for the metaverse to take off, but right now, every time you see the word meta, you can think that's still a dream. But, you know, Zuckerberg can afford to dream. Now if he could afford a haircut, that's the challenge. All right, VR predictions. I'm going to stick predictions in once in a while. Your commercial applications are your real killer app. It's the same thing, same way with the internet. Internet became a fine way for people to express themselves, but it's the business side of the internet that makes it work. We're going to get a lot more multi-screen setups, so I can have 3 screens beside each other or stacked, and I can navigate my virtual world without having to put on the head-mounted device. So that's going to give us an innovation. Again, I still say we're looking for the killer app. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it hasn't happened yet. Now that takes us to, how do we pronounce this? I have a friend who's on the faculty of a university in Florida. He and I have agreed that the correct pronunciation is "aye," because that's the sound we make whenever we're told how much it's going to change our lives. It may have been. Only his is, no, he's enjoying the fruits of, God, if I could have bought NVIDIA stock. Okay, two competing definitions. Is it artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence? I like to think of it as being augmented intelligence more than artificial intelligence, even though that's how it started, because what we're looking at is task association. We're looking at the fact that it helps you do a task, but it is not autonomous. That's not to say that systems can't be autonomous and independent. But here's the key, the consciousness. Do we have any capability for AI systems to become conscious? And I throw that out there. Nobody has any data. There's some people who used to work at Google who said, yes, they are conscious. Most other people don't believe them. The question is, as systems become increasingly complicated, when they approach the level of complication of the human brain, will they develop consciousness? I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know enough about consciousness to know, but I know for the next 5 years, this is what we're going to be doing. It's going to be helping us do things that we already do, to do them more efficiently, helping us find answers, and once we get the bugs out, helping us find truths. Right now, AI generates a lot of what the industry calls them hallucinations. They're not hallucinations. The correct term, the technical term, is bullshit. You get from AI, if you give it the wrong prompt, you get as many wrong, useless nonsense, as my dad would say, just all bullshit, Aug. So anyway, it happens. But this is a toddler technology. It is not anywhere close to maturing. It is revolutionary. What are we using it for in Comtech? By the way, this was my last year slide, Augie Grant using AI. At least they got a beard on me then. Okay, for our industries, they're going to be critical in content creation. The idea that we can take a system now that can take a 10-second sample of my voice, and then you can write a script, and it will deliver that, and you will think that is me. Or you can take 10 seconds of me doing video, put that into the proper AI thing, and have me saying any word you want me to say, whether I've said it or not. The content creation, it's going to revolutionize all areas of content creation, modification, but more than that, we think of content as being part of marketing. I talked earlier about how the media deliver audiences to advertisers. AI is going to allow a lot more personalized delivery, a lot more personalized marketing, so the messages you get are going to be targeted to you. Think about it. I don't know about you, I don't use a lot of L'Oreal products. So anytime a commercial for L'Oreal comes on TV, I ignore it. Same thing with Skyrizi. I happen to be fortunate not to have that particular skin affliction that Skyrizi heals. So I can ignore that. But I have a greater interest in Jardiance. I'm not using it, but I have just been diagnosed, and someday I might need additional medications. I have to pay attention to those type 2 diabetes messages. Not all of them. Well, imagine if the only commercials you saw were commercials that were of interest to you. This is the capability that AI gives. We have the bandwidth to do that. The challenge is, how much of your life are you willing to give up so that AI can do the right programming? Because you're giving up a lot of privacy, and it can make a lot of statements about you from a very little bit of information. Oh yeah, and it can organize your life. You can take, one thing that my wife loves to do when we travel, she takes photos of everything. She must have 2,000 photos on her phone of, hundreds from every trip. She can dump these into AI, it will organize them, it will caption them. So if she's ever looking, I want a picture of that statue in Venice. She could type that in. Oh, there it is. There are all the pictures that have statues in Venice. It will help us in organizing our own digital assets if we choose to let it. The big thing that, it's interesting, I made this slide before I saw the presentation yesterday, the presentation where Michael said that AI's least impact would be education. I think the exact opposite. I think AI is going to be a game changer in education. When you're talking about people learning things, when a person can have an AI instructor that can actually quiz them, find out what they know, what they don't know, and then advance them as fast as they want to advance, you will see a lot more 12-year-olds going to college because they can learn all of the things they need to know in order to go to college. Problem is, we have to realize there are two dimensions of education. One dimension is learning things. The other dimension is socialization. And the socialization takes time. There's also a maturity factor that goes with it. So we're going to revolutionize our educational system, but we have to see that our educational system is more than just teaching people things. It's teaching people how to act and interact with others. It's teaching people how to interpret, etc. So we know that adaptive learning works. If you can give a person a message that's personalized to them and advance them at their rate, AI can do this in a way that nothing else can. So we have a great potential to revolutionize education. Yes?
His thoughts, is there a flip side to that, though, where you become reliant on AI, students, so they don't actually learn?
Yes. What's 28 times 42? If I ask you that, what would you do? Yeah.
30 times 40 and then,
I know. Yeah, but you know how to do that in your head. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's a skill we probably both learned growing up. Almost everyone who doesn't have who aren't follically challenged, as you and I are in different ways, they would pull out a calculator. And we were all told in the 1970s, you may not use the calculator. You must know how to do this math yourself. Today, we all use the calculator. It's, we get in a car. Anybody use your nav? You know? when I taught my kids to drive, it's always know 2 different ways to get to where you want to go. And they know, all I got to do is the app will tell me. Yes, there's a chance we will become dependent, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you become dependent and it goes away. But the question is, can AI do the analysis? Can AI provide the context? I don't know. I don't think so. But you're right, there's a danger. But it's like saying, we better not put nav in cars because then people can't be able to find out where they're going. It's a tool, and we don't want to give our kids calculators. I still remember those days. I remember the day I saved, working at Winn-Dixie in high school, and I saved up $100 so I could buy the 12-function calculator. That was my prize purchase in high school. Sorry, waxing philosophical. Okay. I did this slide last year. I went to update it, and I said, there's no difference. The first one is the biggest thing you need to know. Current case law says that anything in the U.S., anything that is created by AI cannot have copyright protection. So for a lot of my illustrations, I've gone to an AI tool and said, give me an illustration of this, and then I don't worry about violating anybody's copyright. It's a great way to protect yourself. I expect this to change because there's a lot of money at stake, and if somebody can say, hey, we can give AI copyright protection, then, or give the company that owns the AI copyright protection, then that company can have a lot of money. The whole purpose of copyright is to monetize things. You know, I like to think back to It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, the Frank Capra movie, about George Bailey at Christmas time in the 1940s. and was owned by RKO Films that never renewed the copyright, and suddenly it was public domain, and anybody could make copies and sell it. Any TV station could air it at Christmas time. And then along came an attorney, Ron Gertz. I know him. I was having dinner with him one night, and I said, you know, the person I curse is the one who took It's a Wonderful Life out of copyright. And he laughed at me because it was him. He was the one who knew that Buffalo Gals, the song in It's a Wonderful Life, was under copyright. Nobody could air the movie unless they had the rights to the music. And he gave that for $450, gave that piece of advice to the company that owned the RKO, and they asserted their copyright, put it back into private ownership so they could monetize it. Well, what's the point? People want to make money. And if we get rid of this limitation that the courts have found, so this is a change that I expect to happen within 3 years. I don't want to say it's going to happen tomorrow, but there's too much money at stake. Safety and veracity are important. How do we keep AI from doing the wrong thing? You know, you don't want to put AI in charge of a self-driving car today, because if AI thinks there should be a road there, whether there is or not, it will turn and crash the car. Veracity. We know that you can have AI write a paper or a legal brief. I have a tool that looks at any paper submitted by a student to see if the citations actually exist, because AI will make up something that looks like a citation, but it doesn't actually exist. There are a number of attorneys nationwide that have been burned by this because they've had AI prepare briefs, and then the courts have looked at the briefs and found the cases don't exist. That leads to sanctions for the attorneys. So, biggest issue, worker displacement. AI is going to get rid of a lot of jobs. This is a continuing challenge with technology. I think back to when I was, my first job out of college, I was working in the broadcast department of the Florida Farm Bureau. And across from our suite of offices was the typing pool. And it was a great big fishbowl with rows and rows of typewriters and people who worked 2 shifts a day, just typing up insurance policies, just putting in information, stuff that's done automatically by a computer today. All those typists were put out of work. All the people who had a secretary in the 1960s and 70s who would type up correspondence, because if you wanted to send a note to 10 people, that had to be typed 10 times. That was a job that went away. And those people started doing other things. They became administrative assistants. They got more responsibility. It elevated the level of the job. That's going to happen with AI. The underlying data sources for generative AI is the hottest issue. In order for AI to actually predict anything, it has to have a data source that it's based on. And there are big challenges of large, especially media companies, challenging ChatGPT and other AI companies saying, you may not use any of our material to train your AI. That's a violation of our copyright. And they say, okay, we won't do that. I don't know how you tell whether they have or not. That's a tough issue. The real interesting thing is the access to news sources. There are a lot of people who don't want their, a lot of media organizations that don't want their content to be used by generative AI. The interesting thing is most of those that say no are kind of left-leaning, but there's a whole group of right-leaning organizations. Oh yeah, use us, train on us. So when you ask AI for the news, they give not only news, but a specific slant, only because the content they were trained on is of a specific type. So what's the impact? It's going to change in processes, the way we do things. The process of creating graphics, of writing press releases. You want to summarize anything. I love the cartoon of a person who uses AI to create a PowerPoint and then share it, and the person on the other end saying, I'm not watching the PowerPoint, I'm using AI to summarize it down to a single bullet. So it's, and I would have put it up there, but it would have been a violation of somebody's copyright. So you have to imagine it. But there are new products, new services that are come out. Adaptive learning and big data are the start, customized entertainment. I can't imagine how we're going to be using AI for having fun in a couple of years, but we are. The term AI girlfriend needs to be somewhere in your vocabulary. All right, digital signage. Not a lot new with digital signage, but what's going on is big. This is not a giant basketball, this is the sphere. This is where Ray, I was just talking with Ray beforehand, Ray's going to be watching the Eagles inside this dome tomorrow night. And inside this dome that can show anything on the outside is another set of screens that create a different type of immersive concert experience, a different type of immersive movie experience. That's the latest in digital signage because it's so big. They're going to make a second one probably in Dubai. They were looking to do it in London, and all the people who lived around it said, no, we do not want all the traffic, we do not want all the light. That belongs in Vegas. But if you ever want to have some fun, if you have free time, I put some videos in last year. They're fun to watch, they take up time. Just put video of Sphere, and there are all kinds of fun things that they do with that. Some real smart people. That's the cutting edge of digital signage, but the practical uses are really, really broad. Actually, for the past few years at USC, taught courses in digital signage. We can take these big video walls, we can use them for advertising. We can provide information of any type. They can be used to entertain people. Wayfinding's a big thing. You know, you can't fly on an airplane now without having digital signs help you find your gate. Hell, got to find out if I'm on the upgrade list. I love it. And the biggest emerging one is use of the signage to create an atmosphere. So instead of having a gray wall, if that was all a display, we could create a mood in here. We could create trees, or we could create rocks, or we could have a rock band in the background. What's the atmosphere you want? So digital signage is growing at a slow clip. The biggest thing is the cost of the large displays. The School of Journalism at the University of South Carolina just put a big sign in the lobby, and I wanted to talk about that in class. How much did that cost? And nobody wanted to tell me. So I had to do a little digging. $80,000 for one big screen. That pays for a lot of technology in the classroom, but it also serves a lot of other functions. So as the cost comes down, we're going to see a lot more uses of digital signage. They are efficient. You can change the messages instantly. The old style billboards would have one message all the time. A digital billboard will rotate 7 to 10 messages, give you 7 seconds each, so you can sell that same billboard 7 times. There are environmental issues. They use a lot more power. Except the amount of power they use is coming down as they learn to be more efficient, and they add solar generation to a lot of these facilities. Regulation's a big factor. You've got to worry about where you're allowed to put a sign, where you're allowed to put a changing sign. So lots to follow in digital signage. Again, I've done a whole course on it, so if you're ever interested, I'd love chatting about it. Internet of Things, the idea that we can embed internet access and internet capabilities in any device has been aided in the last 3 years by implementation of the Matter standard. Now, the first products with Matter integrated were just released at the Consumer Electronics Show. There are more and more, but we are going to have a lot of capabilities. I don't think the refrigerator that orders food for you or tells you when the milk is bad is the cutting edge application. Roomba's a lot closer when it maps your room and it connects and knows not only not only what to vacuum, but when to vacuum. The idea that thermostats can be controlled remotely now. You know, you want to go home, you're going to get home early, you can just go online, turn on the heat, so your house will be warm and cozy when you get home. I don't do that as much at home as I do in my car. I got Internet of Things technology in my car, so on a cold day, I hit the button and it turns on the heaters and everything, so I get out and get in my little electric car, and it's all warm and cozy. We have an issue, though, as we embed the internet. Are things going to be obsolete? Ran into this a few weeks ago, actually a few months ago. My solar system was on gave me instant reports, but it was on a 2G network, and they shut down the network. I said, hey, I just had this installed. Oh yeah, that's your problem. You have to upgrade the modem. Okay, we had to upgrade the modem. There are issues with security and privacy, but there's no question that the increased number of devices with the internet enabled is going to give us new capabilities, new opportunities. Social media. We've got to talk about status of TikTok. I don't know what's going to happen. The only thing I can predict is TikTok will not go away. The user base is too strong. The user base is too active. The user base is too valuable to both politicians and advertisers. There will be a solution. If you want to predict what the solution is, I'll listen to any ideas. The biggest thing, though, is not access, it's prohibiting access. Increasing bodies of research show huge negative impacts, especially on teenagers, from social media, and a lot of school systems are outright banning the use of social media in schools. There are recommendations by pediatricians that nobody under the age of 13 should have any access to social media, and there are questions whether anyone under the age of 16 should. I'll leave that decision to another time, but you need to know the debate is going on, and we may have a generation coming up behind us that has no use for social media because they weren't allowed to use it, and they may reject it. Probably not. Quantum computing. As I said at the beginning, this has the biggest capability to change what we're doing because it increases the processing capability of a computer system by 1 to 2 degrees of magnitude. So it's a lot. Right now, it's all centralized processing. In order to have effective quantum computing, you have to work at near absolute zero temperatures, and you're looking at massive computer systems. They're just being experimented with. My guess is within 5 years, there will be a lot more, and they may find a way to get around that absolute zero barrier. So we might be able to have more portable quantum computers, but if not, you will have a great need for more networking as we communicate with these computers and allow these computers with their AI engines to take control of our lives, which we will willingly yield to them because, you know, makes things easier. Remote work, one of the big impacts of the pandemic and the application of communication technology was the ability for people to do work anytime, anywhere. You know, I loved how Larry started yesterday by talking about how this conference went virtual during the pandemic, and then when we came back to being in person, there was still a group of people who wanted to attend virtually. This is the type of accidental innovation that sometimes fuels the best innovations in technology. The big issues we have to watch out for, there's a big desire for control among managers. Workers like the freedom of working at home because issues related to childcare and commuting. Employers like it when they can do it because they have to provide fewer workspaces, although, look, I didn't have it spell check. That's interaction at the bottom, not interactino. Anyway, the problem is even though it has all these benefits, there's still so many managers who say, nope, I want to see what my people are doing. If I can't see them, they're not doing it. The new mandate that federal workers must be in the office. Actually less about having people in the office, but how can we get a whole bunch of people to quit in a short time? It's, in my opinion, it's a very mindful strategy to reduce the federal workforce by 10%. Yeah. And are there places for these people to work? Unemployment is low. These are people who are highly trained. We're going to get some private enterprise that's going to get some really great workers at a really low cost. So Okay, so a couple of quick predictions to wrap up. TV is going to be very different by 2026, but we'll still be watching the same content. Misinformation, haven't even really talked about it. Misinformation is a huge issue. AI can make up information. You can make up information. I won't mention any specific politician, but politicians can just say stuff and people will believe it. And it's not backed by fact. There's no truth in it. That's a big problem. Huge regulatory and organizational changes are going to happen, and then the courts are going to jump in and say, no, you can't do that. We had our first example of that coming out of a court yesterday. Global considerations obviously increasing important, and the quantum computing, 5 to 10 years before it has a real big impact, but when those impact comes, they will be huge. So I have allowed a couple minutes for questions, comments, differences of opinion. So we'll open it up.
You mentioned quantum computing is something that's bigger than AI, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Willow chip, but you want to expand a little bit on kind of your, just that particular thought about quantum computing being larger than AI?
Yeah. AI changes the process. It allows us to discover things we haven't had before. Quantum computing is going to change the speed. It's going to change the ability to create new types of memory. I think it's the difference between having calculators and having computers. That level of change. And I see that it's very rare I say a piece of hardware is going to make a change, because if you read chapter 1 of my book, I'm all about the hardware is the least important part. In this case, I think quantum computing, and I could be wrong, but in my view, it's that power that's going to make a difference.
You're absolutely right. And are you familiar with the latest Willow chip, where what took 5 minutes would take
a septillion years, yes.
Yeah, 15 septillion years. So
yes, I'm familiar with that.
Longer than the time of the universe, right? So
yeah.
It's just not practical right now. But that's the issue, is getting quantum computing practical. NVIDIA, the CEO, says that it's maybe 30 years. So you're a little bit quicker on your forecast. But
yeah, but he's old technology now. Yeah. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
you think somebody, the next Jensen Huang is going to be...
He's worried about his business.
Yeah, he should. He should. I mean, how many of us are retiring on our Atari stock? Our BlackBerry stock? You know?
Kodak? Yeah.
Yes, Carrie.
Karen has a question.
Yes, Karen.
Hi, good morning. My question is your thoughts on legislation around this technology. At this point, we could be bordering on it just being a danger to some consumers. Like the other day, the Harvard students with the glasses, you scan someone's face and it tells you everything about that person. It just seems like we're going to need legislation in some areas of it to keep people safe. What are your thoughts? Because I haven't heard anything about any impending legislation surrounding AI.
There's actually been a lot of efforts about legislation related to AI regulation. Biden administration put together a task force. That's been disbanded, but I'm sure the Trump administration will have a task force. There are individual think tanks that are working on recommendations. There are groups of people who are trying to create guardrails around AI. So there are efforts. The question is, how successful will the efforts be? Because there's a school of thought that says, if you put regulations on too soon, you impede the advance of technology, and that will allow other countries to pass up the U.S. I mean, right now, the U.S. is way behind China in terms of AI and its implementation. The flip side is we must protect people. You know, the example you give, I actually love. As a teacher, to be able to wear smart glasses, walk into a classroom, and I can look at any student and their name will pop up, and I can pre-program what information I want to know about them. But nothing, if nothing else but the name. That is so important in connecting with someone. When someone says, oh, he knows my name. That freaks students out. When you teach a 300-person class, you make sure you get to know the names of 5 of the students right away, and then you point them out and call them by name, and every student thinks you know their name. Yes, so that part I think is being very useful. The fact that it can do a deep dive and tell you everything about them, where do they live, what's their credit score, who are they dating, that goes a little far, but that's what we have in a surveillance society.
Two questions. One, as an educator, how do you feel about AI for your students' writing? And also, would you use it for the technology update?
Answer the first question. I am training myself to help the students use it in their writing because they're going to use it in their professional careers. My goal is not to teach them to do things the way I did it. My goal is to teach them how to do things the way that will work best for them. And by the way, that's one of the biggest problems you have in education are people, I will train you to do it just the way I learned to do it. You don't want to do that in communication. You don't want to do it in medicine and engineering. So my goal is figure out how it can be done and help them get there. Would I use it in the communication technology update? I don't know. That's the best question I've heard. I will think about that one tonight.
And then another question I had, and that is related to, as an artist, is how to protect artistic intellectual properties. You see art that pops up, and you wonder, oh, who's the artist? And you find out it's AI.
Well, currently under U.S. law, there is no protection. So if you want to protect it, I mean, they give you the simple answer, you make a derivative work. You start with the AI, and then you change something in it, and then you put your copyright on it. So if you make a derivative work where you've taken something and made a modification, you now own it.
Okay, but what about the original artist?
There is no original artist of AI work. By legal definition, if a computer created it, there was no artist. It's like the gorilla that took the pictures in the zoo. They tried to copyright them to benefit the zoo, and the court said, no, gorillas aren't people. They can't copyright something.
Okay,
And the zoo can't copyright it because the zoo didn't create it. Sorry.
Even if the AI is taking a style of a former artist.
That's correct.
The former artist.
That is correct. That under today's law. That's why we need to look. These are debates we need to have, and I don't know the answer, but I can tell you, as of today, the best thing you can do if you want to protect work, make a slight modification so you can claim copyright. Oh, by the way, Ms. Strauss, I am not an attorney. I am not giving legal advice.
Yeah. It's a big concern for the artist world. So, yeah.
I was just going to add to that. So, one of the most litigious entities right now is Getty Images, over the last several years of people using their images without that. And so now there's this very interesting gray space where you create an artificial version of a protected image, and now all of a sudden it's in this nebulous area.
Well, that is protected because if you do base the image you create, if the underlying work that the AI trains on is copyrighted, there's an argument that whatever created is a derivative work and you have to have permission.
Incredibly gray space about how much, if you change a little something, is it a new work? And the lawyers will sort it all out in the courts for sure, right? But
and you got to remember, any of this is the full employment for attorney program. I hope you all realize how much fun I had putting this together this time and knowing how much uncertainty. Usually it's a lot more, I'll tell you what's going on, but this year, there's so much.
Yeah, on your AI concerns, I would add to that, it's, as a leader of a company, is the use of AI within a corporate culture and how it exposes you to potential legal risk. So it's really trying to train your employees on the proper use and actually selecting the proper AI for them to use that they're not exposing you to copyright exposure issues, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, there are huge set of risks there. Not just that, but there are issues related if you work in a unionized environment. What is the AI allowed to do? What is it not allowed to do? Even though the AI could do certain tasks, do we still have firemen on trains? All these things. Okay, last word I want to stress, as I mentioned at the beginning, I retired in May. I still do a lot of this. If I can ever help you out with a project, or if you're ever looking for a data source, I have time, If you ever want me to talk about something, There's a lot of stuff I can bring to bear, and if not, I'll just use AI and make it up. Or, no. Okay, maybe not that. But I want to thank you all so much, and thank Larry for giving me the opportunity. This is one of the most fun hours I have all year. Thanks.